Greetings, everyone. Uh, we are really delighted to have Dr. Paddu Teshaya today. He is a professor from George Mason University in the Department of Mathematical Sciences. And it's very rare to find somebody from mathematical sciences background, a senior academic from that, who is also interested in practical policy and uh, uh, strategy, analytics, data science, these kind of aspects. So he has such a background and interest. He has held a lot of prestigious positions. He has worked with the governor. I think he's currently working with the Office of Governor of Maryland in the US, and he has also worked with our own Atal Innovation Mission. He has been a mentor to some of the Atal Tinkering Labs, and he's also directing a Center for Outreach in Mathematical Professional Learning and Education Technology. So some of his work is about developing competencies and STEM education, promoting STEM education in the higher education field. So, as many of you may know, our vertical at Trade and Commerce, we have been uh, uh, conducting a lot of capacity development programs, webinars, and seminars focusing on boosting capacity in trade policy research and analytics. So, in this context, this is basically one of those programs, but Dr. Padu kindly agreed to do this on a short notice. Um, uh, the way we are thinking of this, the talk that he's going to do today on competencies development for solving global issues, is to in order to achieve the goals that we have on trade policy, like boosting our trade, doubling our exports, and so on. The fundamental requirement for that is developing skills, competencies that are particularly catered towards solving global challenges. That is a prerequisite. So that is a kind of link that we made between trade and commerce and the expertise that Dr. Padu has, and he's going to talk about. We also have our colleague Dr. Shashank Shah here, representing the education vertical. He focuses on higher education, and we'll also have some colleagues from Atal Innovation Mission. So this is basically to trigger this conversation about the need to develop competencies on the ability to solve global challenges. So, and also I would like to also mention on another note that Dr. Padu has kindly agreed to do this despite his hectic schedule. He is actually on his way to his alma mater, Bich Pilani, to be conferred the Distinguished Alumnus Award. So we first congratulate him for this accomplishment, wonderful accomplishment, and also thank him for taking his time out on his way from Delhi to Bich Pilani to spend some time with us. And we look forward to many more discussions and collaborations. Over to
Thank you. Thank you. So if I can share my screen, is there? Oh, actually, I need to be on the
Oh, you have
internet.
to. Oh,
I
you
have to log
need
in.
internet, right?
Is there a
So maybe I think the easier thing is you
is
can
to just give him the
pen drive.
pen drive?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that should be okay. And I'll just tell you
Tell
next slide, and I think that should be good.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna.
Pen drive.
So thank you for the. It's not always that when you start making a connection and you immediately try to arrange for a talk. And so this was actually great that you were able to quickly use that opportunity to get us here, and hopefully this will lead to something. And I've always wanted to share ideas with not just students and faculty, but people that are using this at a policy level and all that. So this is great that we are able to do this. And so since we talked, I'm going to give it to you in just a second. Since we talked, I think I'm going to be focusing on a class that I teach and I focus there on multiple. I want to make sure if the people online, you are able to hear me. I don't know if you can chat on the saying yes or something. That would be great, actually. Sometimes we keep talking and then uh,
We
yes.
can hear you.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to pass the disk uh, to another computer, and I'll continue to talk. So I have about an hour to talk.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you can take another.
Yeah. So I always prepare a lot. So, but then I end up doing 2 slides. So but let me once he brings the talk up, you double click. If you click on tell you really fast, like next slide. So, uh, but I wanted to give you an overview. Yeah, if you can full screen that, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't kidding. It's literally 160 slides. So. Um, so once again, thank you for this invitation. And if you go to the next slide, please, that's me. So that picture is actually kind of talking about all the stakeholders I work with. On the top left is how I teach. Imagine if this room had walls all the way, and the students are really at the walls, actually demonstrating and expressing their ideas and all that, and the teacher is really a facilitator. And this idea is called active learning. So it's an open idea of students expressing their thoughts. If you give a problem, and mistakes come out very openly, and everybody learns from everyone. That's the whole idea. So this is becoming a big deal in every university in the US. Of course, it's not a new idea. Universities are always learning from K-12 education, school education. They already are doing all these types of things and all that. Real world problems, in textbooks is one thing, but when people from the field come and give you problems, that's even more interesting. So the picture in the center is exactly that. And then working with undergraduates and graduate students, and then teacher education. I think there is a lot of scope to enhance pedagogical practices for teachers. And then, other things are with I work with about 23 countries, so so that's just one of the countries. It's actually Suriname, which happens to be in South America, and many people think they speak Spanish, but they actually speak Dutch, and they're bordered by French Guyana on one side, they speak French, English Guyana on the other side, and bordered by Brazil, and 1/3 of the population is of Indian origin. The president is of Indian origin, and so it's a very interesting country. I visit almost every year. The Minister of Education is a good friend of mine, and so we did a lot of things during the COVID. They wanted the curriculum enhancement and all that. So next slide, please. Uh, that's just my contact, so you can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. So I do have a lot to talk, but I'm going to be very quick and give you. This is always like I'm going to be asking you to do things also as I'm talking. So and mines are like parachutes, so they only function when it's open. So if you go to the next slide. So I hope to share with you today. Some of the problem solving ideas, some brainstorming ideas, some technology tools, some frameworks, and some competencies and skills, essentially, in different things. And if you go to the next slide, that my goal is to get you to think about all these things. If you don't know some of these words, that's okay, because at the end of the, hopefully, 45 minutes to 1 hour, you will know all these words. So go to the next slide, please. So one of my favorite is the challenge-based learning. Basically, instead of students coming and getting projects from me, I ask them to pick a goal. And these are, I'll give you an example in just a second. So they may pick like zero hunger or clean water sanitation. And then I connect the STEM to that particular thing because, it's at a policy level. And then here is STEM and there's no connection, proper connection that's made. So, if you think of something like water, you can do the biology of the pathogens. You can talk about the spread of the infectious diseases and model using mathematics. You could do a technology and find the device that will actually tell you whether to drink from that lake or not. In fact, an Indian student from Chennai worked with me. He's at Berkeley right now. So he worked completely online. We published a paper, high school student and this was the surprise actually to both VIT and IIT Madras when I presented. So if we go to the next slide, meet Comfort Ohajunwa. She's not finished her 12th standard yet. I just heard she got, last week that she got from MIT, CMU, Rice, Purdue, a bunch of schools. She's waiting to. So when I presented this slide to IIT Madras and this thing, I'm saying, oh, this is 12th standard and she's published 4 papers already. They're like, the first thing is like, wait a minute, how can a high school student publish? And that's what one of the things I do. She's one of the first people I'm very fortunate to work with to create one of the unique mathematical models for COVID. So what you're seeing here is, I'm not going to go into the mathematics. I'll only keep few slides on the math. I won't really. So what you're seeing is this jazzy models everybody started to come up with. The S there stands for when COVID comes, everybody is susceptible to the disease. Some of them get exposed to it. That's the E, and you get exposed to it because you you meet somebody 10 times, and 2 out of the 10 times, and that's where mathematics the probability of getting that disease, and that's the beta, the transmission rate. And then from exposed, you can either you can get infected and you can show symptoms, that's the S, and you can not show symptoms, that's the asymptomatic piece. And then from infected, you can go to quarantine, and then you can go to recovery or hospitalized to death, and or back to recovery. What was interesting is Comfort connected to the number of beds. I mean, people came up with these models, but they didn't really come up with how many beds are there in these places and all those types of things. But her first paper was very interesting because this type of model everybody did it, but what she did was very interesting. If you go, there's 4 things there. If you go to the next slide, please. So she created a idea for what happens when people go into confinement. So she was interested. Again, she brought these models and all that, and she said in confinement, bringing that into the equations, but things happen inside the confinement. So this model was picked up by Columbia Bogota, which is like kind of the Harvard of Colombia. It's called the UNAL, University Nacional, and so they actually found that her model fit Columbia Bogota data just like perfectly. So we wrote another paper with that. And then one of the major contributions she made is that behavioral changes. Now, all these models did not incorporate social behavior. Like, I don't want to wear face mask. I don't want to social distance. So she brought that concept in for the first time. So that was where she made her thing, and that's why these papers got accepted and all that. But what her recent paper that just got accepted in last month, if you go to the next slide, please, she goes into the confinement, and this is how students come and ask me, like they tell me what they want to do. So what you're seeing is some, pictorial of during confinement, alcoholism goes up, opioids goes up, domestic violence goes up. She was interested in domestic violence. So what you're seeing is these words there. V is victims, A is abusers, and all that. So she comes up with a model for that. That is the 4th paper actually. And so, by the way, when I show those journals, that's Q1. She published 3 Q1s and 1 Q2, and the IIT and all these people are looking at me and saying, "Well, this is." First of all, they can't believe it. Second, because they all are expected to publish Q1 journals, like the top journals. But then when they see you have the opportunity. So I left IIT Madras and VIT. They said, "Can you please create this high school research program?" This is because I have a high school research program with undergraduate and high school students come. It's called Aspiring Summer Scientist Internship Program, 6-week program. And these kids come and they're dedicated on research. With faculty mentors are matched from universities. So imagine, and MIT has a program, very good program called RSI research. So she was one of, RSI selects one per state. She was the one from Virginia. And so this type of program is, even undergraduate research is unheard of in India. So the IIT Bombay, everybody's interested in this.
but because as the whole curriculum is so packed, they don't have a choice to have the freedom to do something. So this is something all the universities really want. This idea of undergraduate research in their not just some capstone, go to some practice school, but really do some hardcore project. But this is what I call as mathematics research with an impact. Because this, after this, we went and collected data from Puerto Rico of from social work, and then really made sense of these models, right? So it's one thing to just publish some random models, another thing to really understand whether it's really useful or not. So this is the recent one. So I won't talk too much about math. If you go to the next slide, please. So I want to just go through different competencies, right? This is a game of chess. So people on the chat, I would love to, I'm going to ask a question now, a bunch of questions. And if you can type on the chat, that'll be wonderful. So if you go to the next slide, I showed this to Atal Innovation last 2 weeks back also. You see a chessboard. How many squares are on a chessboard? Go ahead and type on the chat. 64. They are also shouting the answer out. So it's interesting. I said how many squares on a chessboard? 64 is the obvious one because there's 8 and 8 here, right? But you forgot the square that is outside. See, our natural tendency is not to, is just to like immediately throw out an answer, right? But there's a big square, standing out. That requires critical thinking. Unfortunately, we don't teach critical thinking. Even more interesting, there's 2 by 2 squares, there's 3 by 3 squares, 4 by, so our mind doesn't really, stop for a second. It's like, okay, what's the answer? Multiple choice, this thing. So the thing is that gives us an opportunity to think about the first important competency, critical thinking, like thinking outside the box, outside the square. But this also demonstrates something very important because I went to these schools and IIT Madras, like they gave me 64 also, and I said, unfortunately, so the first important competency, if you go to the next slide, please, is failure. So unfortunately, we teach success so much in this country, in US and all that, we forget to teach failure. So it's very important to somehow in the curriculum, even in NEP, I think they talk about this aspect, but I think it is important to somehow sneak in failure. It's not about the failure of the answer, it's the failure of the process, because then you learn from the process and go back and see which steps to fix and all that. It's going to be there in everything, trade and commerce, anything you think about it, something messed up, and you want to go back and fix. Like if you think about UPS, UPS it's like FedEx. They deliver from point A to point B. What do you think is the shortest route from point A to point B? So if you were to drive a truck to deliver postal service, what is the shortest distance? What we have learned in books and all that. It's okay to say what? Straight line, right? What they figured out, it's not straight line. It's the US has free right and India has free left. So, the free rights that they take, they interpreted the question as shortest time it takes to deliver a parcel. While we are thinking like shortest distance, right? So, and we are putting a textbook approach to that, but they really figured out. So they have this algorithm which is always taking the free rights, and they do the free rights based on the fastest in terms of how we can deliver the thing. So that type of thinking is not taught, right? It's like, yeah.
Actually, even on Google Maps, they have two options actually.
Exactly.
Like shortest by time.
Or this thing. And this was originally done by UPS. So this idea that they came up with was so fascinating, right? So sometimes the business that people do is not understood very well, but there's these really cool ideas. Like for example, last week I had a meeting with somebody who's actually I'm meeting on 2 days from now. It's called Soils, School of Inspired Leadership. So I'm meeting the main head of that. And so have that meeting, somebody met me at Chennai and he said, come to Starbucks to have the initial meeting. I said, I'm in Chennai. Why should I come take me to Saravana Bhavan or something like that? And he said, no, come to Starbucks. And so I didn't realize, okay, I went and had that meeting. But then I realized we had a really good conversation and all that stuff. And then I realized, what is Starbucks really selling? What do you think Starbucks is selling?
Meeting place.
Exactly. Starbucks is not selling coffee. Starbucks is selling space. Because if I went to Saravana Bhavan, there's people talking, everybody moving, the waiter. But I realized we had this nice corner. We spoke for an hour. We figured out some program that we can do together and all that. And we bought coffee 2 times. So Starbucks sold the coffee, but they really sold the space.
Sharon Scott, you didn't mention the waiter will be ready with the bill. The
Bill the last ride he's asking you to leave because, but the thing is, this is the type of thing, right? These businesses are thinking differently than others. So, what failure I think is the first one. If you go to the next one, please. So of course you know failure. Everybody has commented really like Einstein to Lincoln to Edison, for example. I asked the kids even in IIT Madras. They all said, "Oh, he found the bulb, Edison." But they don't realize he failed so many times before he found the bulb, right? So Beethoven there was deaf, So and people didn't realize how classic music he did. Of course, people like Steve Jobs, like he knows how to go from iPhone 0 to iPhone 14 and all that, right? So but what Bill Gates said is very interesting. We keep celebrating success too much in this country and everywhere. We need to start celebrating failure. I think that's I learned it when my daughter in kindergarten. They asked me to buy a robe to walk across the stage. I'm like, she's kindergarten, but they said no, we have to celebrate. I said okay, unnecessary. But that's how it is. But the failure is not celebrated. So I think I really think there is an opportunity there. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is an activity I give to my classroom to ask everybody, young to all the way to interview and all that, and say come up with as many ideas as you can. What happens here is it's a mental block for many people. They don't even know what that means. What am I asking here? What do you mean by ideas? So when you're asking that question, you really don't know what to do here because this is not a textbook problem. So if you go to the next slide, please, you will see that it's about ideation, right? So if this question is asked at a Google interview, in fact, this is a very popular question. If you go to the next slide, you actually see that the kindergartners, the younger grade kids, when the same question was given, next slide, please, they actually demonstrated a very important attribute called fluency in problem solving. So, which is the idea of lots of ideas. So, you got the smiley face. So, it took the kids such a short time to figure out all these emoticons, even though we use this to do in our phone and all that. But we couldn't think of that idea, right? And then there is this flexibility, lots of different ideas when you have red light, yellow light, green light, connecting the dots type thing. So, it turns out that failure, flexibility, and fluency are three very important things in problem solving. So, that's something that I try to get students to think about in terms of problem solving. Next slide, please. And so if we go to the next slide, please. So if you look at these dots, so now it's kind of like a data scientist is going to look at this and say probably it's some dots, right? What else do you think, Arka? What do you think they are? Distribution. He's a man. He's a man. Distribution, like pretty hardcore, right? So he's using its knowledge, right? So in terms of this thing. So if we click one more, please. So if I use my experience and connect the dots, that looks like streets in Delhi connected by roads and maps and things like that, right? But if you click one more time, you realize that now none of us saw the cat coming, right? That's the creativity piece, right? So we didn't even see it. Unfortunately, we don't have that type of a thinking there, right? So we are thinking like, oh, this has to do with my subject, right? And this is a big problem. That idea of creativity of expression and things like that. So next one, and it's very hard to think about create. Before we move to the next slide, what do you think the mother of search engines actually tells us if you type education makes me? Since you're in education, what do you think it will tell us?
Job opportunity.
Okay, job or education makes. What else do you think? On the online also, you can tell me in the chat also. What do you think it will tell us? Education makes me. You're talking mother of all search engines, and you can Google it later. If you go to the next slide, first, can you believe that one of the best machine learning algorithms is churning the responses from so many people? That is, you can check on your cell phones. You'll be surprised. Depressed. So why is this happening? Education makes me depressed. And and this, if you go down fourth and all, it's sleepy and lots of things come up. So if we go to the next one, it's because we go click again. So it's because we treat no keep clicking to the right, yeah, because we treat students as consumers of education, right? We need to move from that model to go click again as students as producers of information. Even better, students are click again, students as peer reviewers and all that. So, and you can do that only by getting them excited about competencies. Click again, please. 21st century skills, which is communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Unfortunately, our faculty are not ready for it. And I was very surprised at IIT Madras last time that they are actually ready to, when I showed these things, they were like, can we have a faculty development workshop? I'm like, sure, So, but the fact that such a top institution is actually wants to try these things is a big deal. They can totally like ignore and then say, I will just do the same way. But the fact that people are willing to change is where, that makes it a big difference and all that stuff. VIT did the same thing. So if you go to the next slide, please. So one of the things is we keep teaching students content knowledge, discipline specific skills, so science, technology and all that. But what the workforce is looking for is the transferable skills, like, problem solving. I mean, they want quick thinking, like, if you say the straight line, okay, then I will let you UPS and you test it out, the model fails, then there is something else that then they figure out so that type of thing is not really taught. And so I'm glad I actually looked at NEP. NEP actually has, like, I've been studying that, and the word computational thinking, problem solving, all those 21st century skills is repeated in many places. I just hope that the people that wrote it really know what they actually mentioned. But this is why I want to actually talk to people, in terms of how we can do this and all that. So if we go to the next slide, please. So now I'm going to go into a brainstorming technique. So it's a very powerful technique which I bring in, and you can do it with any of your organizations. So your staff, for example, I do it with students. It's called 5 Whys. So I got caught speeding when I was driving to Niti, let's say. Why? Because I was late for work. Why? Because I got up late. Why? Because alarm clock didn't work. Why? Because the batteries were flat. But why? Because I forgot to replace them. This idea of root cause analysis is a very powerful way. You can use it in any of your organizations. So you can just say, so if you go to the next slide, if you click one more. So this was actually introduced by the guy Sakichi Toyoda. I'm sure you all know what car he kind of created, Toyota. So he used this idea. He'll go into his Monday morning and he'll say the brake pedal for 85% of the people is not working. Or you can go into trade and commerce and then say a fact that happened. And then I'll ask you why. And then you come back and say, here's why. And then we go back 5 times. The idea is 4 to 5 times and you actually nail the root cause. So if you go to the next one, I'll show you. So that's the Washington Monument. It is deteriorating. Why? Because they're using harsh chemicals. Why are they using harsh chemicals? Because there are lots of bird droppings. Why are there lots of bird droppings? Because they are coming for spiders they like to eat. Why are there many spiders? Because they like to eat those insects. Why are there many insects? They are attracted to the light. So you know what the solution to this problem was? Change the bulb. Sometimes we spend $2 million to renovate that building. You just have to change the bulb. The insects will stop coming, then the spiders will stop coming, the birds will stop coming, and no droppings and no harsh chemicals. So sometimes even complicated problems can be solved in a very simple way. That's the idea. So it's just about this 5 Whys. It's a very powerful technique. I mean, if you have not used it, please do. It will be wonderful. Use it with your organization. Just a simple thing. Why did this not work? Why? And beauty is it'll go in different directions. And then you prioritize which one you want to focus on. That's what Toyota's idea was. If you go to the next slide. So I did this last week with VIT. VIT, I focused on IIT and VIT, I focused on the bottom one. 8,000 engineering students are dropping out in 5 years. Why? And what was interesting is many people started blaming content is hard. Why? Because they are not prepared. Why? Because the teachers did not prepare them. Everybody blamed their school teacher. The other thing was they blamed the faculty because they were teaching in a very traditional way. And the other group was students being blamed because they didn't learn it. So it was interesting that all these different ideas came, right? So if we ask something like this other one from Economic Times and Hindu about Indians, lots of them have such creative and critical thinking ideas. But there was this article, both articles kind of few months apart came like, do not innovate. So it's amazing. These faculty members are so good. They'll create something. They'll publish papers like, you were saying, and then that's it. Like, let's go to the next paper or let's go to the next stuff. They don't realize there's something, one more step. It's productizing that thing, right? That innovation part. Unfortunately, they are not trained on, like many people are not trained on that part. And so they're good in what they're doing, but it's just the matter of how to show that. And then everybody will do stuff like last scene of Three Idiots, right? So, move the cycle, dynamo comes. Like, it's about energy conversion. But that extra step is where I think the business and entrepreneurship, I think that needs to be integrated in everything that we are doing. Mathematicians should be able to do entrepreneurship, right? So That is not happening right now. So I think that gap, and then look at the workforce. This is where, trade and commerce and all that stuff, this is what is happening. Of course, many of them is due to COVID and all that. So, that's one thing. Next slide, please. So keep going. So this is a very nice technique. It's the fourth F word I'm going to teach you today. If you click on it. So if I ask you, like I asked this to everybody that I've been giving talks, and I said about how many seconds are in a year. So when I asked this question, the natural tendency for everybody was, okay, 365 days in a year, 24. If you continue to click, that's fine. Keep continuing to click. So I'll keep talking. 365 days in a year, and then 24 hours in a day, and then they said 60 minutes in an hour, then they said 60 seconds in a minute, and then they gave me the answer. I said, did you listen to my question carefully? I said, about how many? So here's where 365 is about 400. Keep clicking, please. So 400 days. So I don't need 365. 400 is easy to work with, right? So and 24 hours, I want to work with something easy, 25. And 25 and 4 go very well. 25 is quarter, 4 quarters is a dollar, right? You can do it very quickly. So 400 days a year, 25 hours a day, and 60 and 60 is 3,600, which is close to 4,000. A child can actually quickly multiply these numbers. It's so easy to multiply. But we don't teach that. It's a quick estimate, right? If you're on the phone call, you don't have the time to do the multiplication and tell, or if you're in that 45-second elevator with Bill Gates, and he asks you this question, something like this, he's going to appreciate, right? Not sitting there and saying, I will use my calculator, multiply, and give you the answer. This type of thinking is needed. This is actually a part of computational thinking, right? So, and even in, think about trade and commerce, people need to be, quickly, it's not about exactness, it's about, good approximations and all that. So, this idea is not mine. It's a very famous a Nobel Prize winner by the name Enrico Fermi, 1938 physics Nobel Prize winner. What is interesting is he'll go into the classroom and ask a question to the students. He will not tell what he's teaching. And this idea, and if you go to the next slide, for example, I'm asking you a question. Take a guess, all the online folks and here also, how many air-conditioned repairmen do you think are in Delhi? Believe it or not, there was a Google interview a few months ago. 208 students who did data science walked into the room. Only 6 walked out. And the question was, how many doors are in New York City? For a $15,000 per month internship for 3 months. That was the question. The kids were like, I did all this fancy data science and you're asking me how many doors are in New York City. The point for Google was not like, show me algorithm and support vector machines. They wanted to know how you're thinking, right? So here is a question. How many air-conditioned repairmen are in Delhi? So what would be one thing so take a guess. Just give me some numbers. Let's see how you, give me some random numbers. What do you think, Rudra? Just give me a number.
But how I will think about it is...
No, give me a number and then let's see how good the thing. Just make up a number. First, it's like 1,000. Yeah, go ahead. Some from online. What's that?
2 lakhs.
2 lakhs. Whoa. Okay, 2 lakhs. Okay. So 10,000. Okay. How about? So the thing is, from here on, right? It's about how we are going to solve this problem, right? So I'm going to make some assumptions here, and let me just go through it. So let's suppose that a family in Delhi has 4 people: mom, dad, and 2 children. It's an assumption, completely. Maybe this is an average family. So one data that I would like to give you is that Delhi's population is about 30 million. Okay, so 32 or something like that. So I'm making it 30. So suppose I make the assumption that every family has 4 people. 30 million divided by 4 is going to be 7,50,000, right? So, and then I'm going to make an assumption that not everybody can have an 75
lakhs.
75 lakhs. Yeah. See, I did the math wrong. So, not 75.
7.5 million.
7.5 million. I was doing it in million and lakhs. Okay. Right. Okay. So yeah, that's right. 75 lakhs or 7.5 million, I guess, right? So then I ask, suppose I'm making assumptions, right? Not everybody can have a air condition. Maybe every 5th house has an air condition. So again, I'm making assumption, right? I'm talking to the Google guy. I'm convincing him about my. So okay, that means 7.5 divided by 5, which is also easy to do. 1.5. Okay. Now let me talk about air conditioned repairman. I'm coming all the way to the Sunset Mark. Then I have to go to some other street. So 2 jobs. lunchtime, and then I will probably go to another part of Delhi, another part of Delhi, 4 jobs a day. That's probably the traffic, that's all I can do. And then there's how many days are in a week? Yeah, but I don't work on the weekend, so 5. But what I did there is I don't like, multiplying by 7 is harder than multiplying by 5. You see, that's the trick, right? 4 times 5 is 20 jobs. Now, how many weeks are in a year? But I take 2 week vacation. So I notice how I'm using good numbers, right? 50. So 50 times 20 jobs is 1,000 jobs. So there's 1,000 jobs to do, and there's 1.5 lakhs. So all you have to do is divide that, right? So you get the number that you want, right? How close are you? Now you can figure out. But absolutely everything that I've assumed could be rubbish. But I had 3 minutes, and I was able to convince this person that I can talk to a client and make some kind of the addition there and all that stuff. So this idea of Fermi is a very interesting thing. So when I give it to graduate students, if you go to the next slide, and undergrads, he has all these different types of problems, like how many dollar bills can you stack up all the way to Mount Everest and all that stuff. But it's very interesting if you take it to a social cause. If you go to the next slide and actually apply to something like good health and well-being. Next slide, please. And I asked how many hospital beds are available for acute cases of COVID-19 in India. So they need to know how many hospitals are there and how many beds in each hospital, how many are used for, cancer and other things. And then, so getting these types of techniques into the classroom or even workforce is actually a very useful thing to actually do and all that. So that's why this example is there. So please tell me how I'm doing on time, and then I will fast forward. So
Around half an hour.
half an hour. Okay, great. So if you go to the next slide, please. So I want to tell you a story about data now. Another competency that we don't do a really good job. And if you go to education departments, they have nice pedagogical tools that we don't really use. So you're looking at something. What do you notice and what do you wonder? What do you notice and what do you wonder? What do you think that is? It's a map. Okay. What else do you wonder about that thing? Any wondering?
Notice and wonder are in different directions, opposite directions.
Oh, interesting. Very nice. Opposite directions. Okay. So you're all focusing on the street. Somehow you're not focusing on something I want to talk about.
Very narrow, conceptual, in the middle, and very open.
You're still talking about the streets. There's something else in that map that
Lego building blocks.
Lego building blocks. Very nice. So all these this is how you actually get students excited, right? But there are these black dots. So you start to wonder what those black dots are. That's when I show this person. This person, I don't know if you know this person. This person is John Snow. Dr. John Snow is considered the father of epidemiology. He is the one who tracked cholera. Those black dots that you see there are deaths actually. So he goes house by house and collects the census and he puts it on a map. So literally, even trade and other things, nobody gives you nice numbers. They give you some kind of data like that looks like this, right? So now you have to make sense of this data. So if we go to the next slide, please. So he tried his best to convince the doctors. This is 1854, Soho, London. He tried to convince the doctors that the disease is what the doctors thought was the disease cholera was coming from air, toxic air. But he was trying to convince, no, it's coming from water. But nobody wanted to agree because it had the fecal connection, so they didn't want to, associate with fecal and all that stuff. So they completely disputed his theory. So he had to prove something. So what he did was he clustered those dots. Those are all the deaths of people, and he figured out. If you go to the next slide, please. He figured out that at each one of those things there was a water pump. And then what was so interesting is that he did not know mathematics he used, and we teach this in geometry all the time, like a line that is drawn perpendicular to another line which bisects it, perpendicular bisector. Students memorize it. And then if you're standing on that line, you're equidistant from the endpoints, a theorem that they teach, and then they never use it. This guy, what he did, he found out how many people are walking to those pumps equidistant and all this. So he basically used that geometry random thing that we teach, but he used it in real life. So if you go to the next slide, please. And he figured out this, by the way, mathematicians, Arka, you will know this is called Voronoi diagrams. Now, he did not even know the name, but he came up with this idea. And Voronoi came after that and then made this a big theory and all this. So he just used it practically, right? These are things that are in the textbook, People just don't know. So it's an example of we tend to go for here is the mathematics, go solve the problem. That is our biggest mistake, I feel, in the Indian system, in the US system. It should be, we should go beyond that and saying, here is the problem, let's find the mathematics to do it. And I think when we turn into that part, let's find the physics to do it, whatever to do it, economics to do it, because the problem is already there. Unfortunately, all the school system, they get to the problem after the fact, right? So that's the problem. They teach you tools, techniques, and then there's no time for the problem, just examination and all that stuff, right? So what he did was he used this idea, he convinced everybody using mathematics. For once, people are like, oh, math is useful. And when the students are asking, why am I using this? This is a great example to actually see. And then you can go to the next slide, please. Then you can actually, this pump, when you go to London, you will see it actually. It's a tourist spot. The guy from the tourist bus actually speaks about it. Nobody actually knows what it is and all that stuff. If you go to the next slide, please. So then you teach them technology, you can do heat maps, you can do all sorts of simulations and all that stuff, right? So now you're really seeing STEM in action, where that when I talked about the virus, the pathogens in the water, you can talk about the biology. When you're talking about the mathematics, here is technology. So the STEM is in action in a very simple problem, but the beauty is he used data to convince everybody and this type of thing and all that. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this is another one, right? So if everybody is thinking about charts, there's a very nice book called Say It with Charts. So go to the next slide, please. In fact, these are the most popular 5 charts. You can teach whatever you want at the end of the day, trade and commerce, all these people, everybody will use these fundamental charts to do presentations, right? So, but unfortunately, sometimes people don't know which chart goes with which one. They just use let me give you some examples. Go to the next slide, please. So suppose we are in a healthy industry, there are 11 performance measures and 3 types of companies. Let's go to the next slide. So you're at a conference and a guy is presenting like this. What's the problem? You laugh. Why do you think, what's the problem with this? You can't read anything, right? So I don't really care about this presentation, even though he's trying his best to show 11 performance indicators, 3 things and all that. So very poor presentation, right? The presentation skills. Next slide, please. So suppose, say, I want to show our sales has grown considerably since 1996. Let's go to the next slide. Here's the picture that I'm showing. I'm not kidding. People use these types of pictures, right? So what's wrong with this thing? Comparison, exactly. Comparison, that entity comparison. I don't even know what the pie is. What's the whole? What's the whole here, right? So, and it's also not consistently increasing. It does increase at the end, but it's not a good graph. So what would be a good graph for? Exactly, line plot. So this type of which chart should I draw for which one, right? So that it matters, in presentation. It's a skill that people should have. If we go to the next one, so it's a time, right, over time. Suppose compared to our 4 competitors, we rank on the return on investment with 14%. Go to the next one. This is an actual graph I've seen. Somebody, I'm like, where is our company and where is the 14% and all that stuff, right? So
I think it's
yeah. So if we go to the next one, really, this is an easy, bar chart. Just do a bar chart and people. Unfortunately, I'm telling you, even some of our best graduates don't have the skill. You have to tell, they just say, oh, let's do this plot, let's do that plot to impress people, right? Sometimes you don't, that's because Excel gives that nice plot. And recommended. So sometimes Excel is smarter than, us, right? So if you go to the next one, so this one, if you go to, actually go back to the last one, this one is based on entities. The last one was over time scale. So the next one, please. And suppose I want to show our market share has increased since 1996. Let's go to the next slide. Here's the graph. And I am not kidding. I saw this graph also present by somebody. And I have to really find out where my market share is and why is our company, right? So here is a classic one. This is where, like you just said, comparison. If we go to the next one, classic graph, just put the thing right next to it and then compare it, right? So then, I know exactly where I'm in the market. So if we go to the next slide, so this is comparison. So this one is the worst one. Opinion polls show this is for election and all that. If we go to the next one, I mean, why do you waste marketing material to show me that it's 50% and 50%, right? So it's a total waste of money on marketing, right? So if 50% is one group, then the other one is a total waste of money. But people do this all the time, right? So the next one, please. So if you look at this table of 3 companies, product A, product B, product C, what do you see? What are all the things that you see here? What are the observations that you can make? What messages can we give here?
Sales of product A increases.
Sales of product A increases. Actually, sales of all the ones increases.
Yeah.
So that's one message that you see, right? What else?
Maximum contribution.
So it's a tricky one. If you
In terms of units, not value.
right.
Product A contributes the maximum to the total.
Exactly. But do you think product C did a good job or product A did a good job inside the company?
Depends on the value.
Depends on the value.
Depends on the value, but they doubled. Look at that, 7 to 13 is almost double, right? Another observation that we forget to see is, look at May, sales are all higher than every other month, right? So maybe there is it's like one of those labor, like we have some Memorial Day weekend sales, right? So the thing is, with one table, when you ask students, like what all do you observe, notice and one, it's a very powerful technique. So, the next one, please. So if you go to the next slide, so it turns out that what is the message, what are you comparing, and what is the form of the message? It's very, very important. So if you click on the next slide, so technically we can teach something as all top business schools should be teaching this. Like if you click one more time, you don't use a pie chart for everything, only when you're comparing components. You don't use a bar chart for time series or something. So this type of thing is what the workforce is asking for. They're not asking for jazzy graphs and all that stuff. So if you go to the next slide, so for example, here is the ice cream sales and shark attacks. This was published in the front of New York Times once and saying, and people were very confused. What do you think is happening here? Anyone?
Weather related.
Weather related, exactly. So there is a confounding variable, temperature, that we don't think about. When it's hot, you go to the beach, you eat ice cream. And when you go to the beach, you have shark attacks, right? So, so this idea of causation versus correlation needs to be understood when you're doing these types of things. And then the next one is, so you can go to the next one. So, and next one, please. So this is a interesting graph that was also produced by New York Times. This is all the countries. You can see India there, China there. So the size of the bubble has to do with population. The x-axis is GDP for every 100, and then on the other side is the number of doses, like is the vaccination rate. What all do you see in this graph? Observe this graph carefully. What all do you see? What immediate conclusions can you see? Richer countries have greater vaccination. Okay, that's kind of the obvious one that can come out here. What else is interesting? Do you see a supply-demand type thing here? Look at some of the countries. So the supply part is, are they vaccinating enough? I mean, like, are the doses being used? Are the number of, are there people to give the doses? Is there cold storage? And the demand part is, resistance due to religious or, other things that election, like, due to government and all that stuff, right? So certain countries behave differently. The beauty of this is, like, it's not a scatter plot where you throw some XY points. The size of the bubble is another variable. Population, like the diameter, is another one. So it's called a bubble chart. So once you start to realize there are other charts where you can show more than other things, it becomes even better. In fact, if you go to the next slide, and I'm not going to spend time, but there's a website there. If you click on it, it's the moving bubble chart, and they have arranged all the bubble chart, and they've actually now they have many more messaging here, like which ones were below average vaccination, which ones were above vaccination. So you will be very surprised where India is versus other countries are and all this stuff. So sometimes we don't spend time on these types of critical thinking activities and all that stuff. Even, any business, right? Even trade and commerce, you can show a graph like this and then ask what's going on here and all that. So if we go to the next one. I don't have time to do that. I'll come back to this later on. So a technology platform. This I'm going to go through. I usually have an activity with people to draw. How do you make toast, right? So how do you make toast? Tell me, how do you make toast? Just tell me the process in your head.
Take a slice of bread.
Take a slice of bread, yeah.
And then put it inside the toaster.
Very systematic. And
press the button down.
Press the button down. So it's very, very systematic, okay?
Switch on the toaster.
Switch on the toaster and
oh
wow, this is very detailed, right? So okay, yeah. You must be in education. So.
That's
okay.
Track whether
time.
Yeah.
Keep time and then well done or something like that, right? What about you?
Same.
Okay. Anybody like just want to put it and take it? So we go to the next slide. So exactly what you just said, right?
Yeah.
So typical, you have the timer and all that stuff. And then of course you want to put PB and jam and all that stuff, right? That's the traditional toast baking. If you go to the next one, this is all the diagrams that have been collected for different types of toast making. Right? Some people are like just they don't care about the bread and all that. So you can see some of them have drawn the toast. This is a drawing activity. You should definitely try it with your because it doesn't matter what background you have. It's a fantastic activity. I'll tell you why we do this thing. We go to there's a TED talk also on this. We go to the next one. Some people it's all about the toast. They want it to be well done and all this stuff. So those people are about the toast, how it comes out, right? Product comes out. We go to the next one. For some people, it's the transformation of the toast, what I put on top of the toast. It's like we're selling the thing like Starbucks, right? Can I sell space can I sell coffee with space, right? So they're like that type of people. So the next one, some of them are all about the toaster, right? I will put it and then put it in the plug like him, right? He was like put step 1, step 2, step 3. And for next one, please. For some of them, it's the engineering. This is the engineering crowd. All the VIT folks were like the solenoid and this thing. They were drawing all the inside of the toaster and all that. I said, just draw toast, and they thought they would have to draw the toaster for me, right? So if we go to the next one, this the group of people that they think all about the people. It's about the people, right? And the next one, and in your profession, this is very important, right? Who is this thing? Like Dabbawala. I mean, that whole thing that goes and all that stuff. Then this is the most important. It's the experience. It's all about the experience. Like that ending should be happy, right? The people-centered approach. If you go to the next one, it's all about the supply chain. Go. If you don't have bread, go to the store and get the bread, right? So and then the whole supply chain and how it goes until the yummy part. Next one, some of them are crazy. They go back to the field. This is actual diagrams by people, students, right? So they're like, okay, I'll go to the field, make the dough, blah, 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 and all that stuff. So if we go to the next one, so it turns out that what's common about these things? So if you look at what is common, click next, please. So there is these objects that are these, parts of a system. We call them, if you click next, so these are called nodes. And then these nodes are connected by these links, basically. When you are connecting these nodes and links, you're doing what is called a systems thinking. So if you go to the next level, it's a very Harvard does such a great job what systems, it's a fantastic approach and really brings out who we are, right? Like he was very meticulous. I don't have time. I'll just put the bread and take it out and very quickly do. I'm not interested in the or I have my wife wants it well done, like roast. Those. So people are different, right? So but this idea of systems thinking is people are very different when they think about their job and all that. Go next, please. So it turns out that the average number of nodes. This is some people overkill it, like take 15 steps. Some people just do one step, and some people like average is about 3 to 5. 3 to 7, 5 to 7 is a good one. So if we go to the next slide, so 3 is a reasonable, trivial number of nodes. If we go to the next one, it's like that's too much. I mean, that's just a lot of waste of time for doing bread, right? An ideal thing, if you go one more, please. It's kind of reasonable number 5, 6, 7, and all that. We go one more, and it gets interesting if you ask your team to make bread in teams. Try this. It'll be very interesting how each one of their ideas will all come together, and then you will realize the process, the whole idea of process. Even though I'm talking about bread, you know what I'm talking about. It can be education, curriculum, or trade, and it can be anything that you're doing, but the idea of systems thinking is what is coming out here. Next one, please. But you have to be careful with systems thinking, right? So it should not become the 6 blind mice and then 6 blind men. And then next slide, please. Everybody's touching, and you don't want to build this. Yeah. That's the ultimate thing, right? So you want to be careful. The product that is coming out should be very important, right? So the next one, please. So this is actually good for you because this is something that is taught for middle schoolers, but so powerful. It's called Camper. S is substitute, C is combine, E is adapt, M is modify, P is put to other use, E is eliminate, R is reverse. I've used this in education for curriculum development. I've used this in product development also. So if you keep clicking next, I'll just start. Substitute means what else can I substitute into this product? Keep going. And combine means what can I combine it with? Keep going. Adapt means what can I change it to make it useful for something else. And so just keep clicking. So it's all these different things. And since you have my slides, you can go through it later.
So what can I put to other use? Keep going, eliminate. What can I eliminate out? What I can. So I'll give you an example. Next slide, please. So this is a product called Smarties. You all probably have seen it. We click once, you see that I want to substitute. Click once. So I can take out the chocolate and put fruit in, and I can call it fruity. Unfortunately, this product is already there. Right? You think it's a new idea, but it's not a new idea. It's already there, right? If we go further, so you can even next one, please. You can take out the shell and make it gum, and then it's gummies. This product is also there, right? So it's product development idea. If we go to the next one, you can combine it with ice cream and make a new product. Go to the next one. You can combine it with cake. Go to the next one. You could actually adapt it like like the Easter egg hunt and all that. So next one, please. You can modify it. You can make it smaller in a packet. All these are products, mini Smarties. Go to the next one, please. Magnify it. Next one, please. Put to other use. You could make it Easter egg hunt and all that. Next one, please. Eliminate is very hard, but you can take the color out and make it black and white. So I know my friends like chocolate like this one, black and white chocolates, right? So, but you just eliminate the color. But this idea of product development is such a powerful thing. If you go to the next one, I've given this workshop to so many people, and some countries, third world countries, when I give it, there's a lady who makes juice, and she used this idea in Suriname, and now she's one of the best juice brand person in Suriname. It's like without patent and all that, but she has this combination and all that stuff, right? And so you can take the chocolate out. So the next one. So the beauty is, if I give you a pencil and say scamper it, you can take the the eraser. You can take the lead out and make it something else, or you can make it bigger, smaller, adapt it, put to other use. You can make it as a welcome sign and all that stuff. So I would really urge you, if you go to the next slide, this is my standard exercise to my grad students, undergrad students, and all that. I give them a toothbrush and say scamper it. So if you click on the next slide, you'll be surprised that you can do a lot of things with toothbrush, all sorts of weird things and all that. And most of the time they think it's a new product. It's already there in the market. That's what I'm trying to teach them. Is like, so you can try something in trade and commerce here. Just could be a process. Like maybe you have a software that is old. When I was the director of the NSF, National Science Foundation, which is the DST of India, this is software all the program directors use. It's so old. And we keep using the same thing. And so I did a whole thing on, what can we combine with? What can we substitute with? So you can take any process, like, bringing tea or whatever it is, that whole process, you can do this. So just another competency. So if we go to the next slide, please. This is another one which is more quantitative, and you can keep clicking. Click, please. So this is where, you have vendors that you're using for, say, different, say, transferring something and all that. So go next slide, please. So suppose I'm going to buy a car and there's 4 cars there that is available. Then you can create a matrix like this, and on the columns are, why are you buying that particular car? Do you buy it for the cost or the fuel economy or the ease of maintenance or the number of passengers you want to carry? So as a team, you can ask them to give. So first you have the vendors. Next slide, please. So you have the attributes that you want to select, and it could be a lot of things based on what your business is. If you go to the next one, then you give weights. What is important to your business? If cost is important, give more weight to the cost, or in this case, family, right? If I have a big family, I'm going to say I need a car with more passengers, right? And then what you do is next slide, please. You give like score for each, like you go down the cost column and compare Suburban versus Honda Odyssey. And then you multiply 5 times 4 is 20. This is how you calculate your GPA basically. And then you add it all up and you get a nice quality score. Next slide, please. Multiply the score. Next slide, please. And then you get a number and then you make a decision. But here you have like 57 and 50 are so close. So there's something in Ford Expedition and Toyota CN I need to dig deeper and figure out which vendor I should pick and all that. So another skill that can be brought into the classroom and all that. And even companies, workforce and all that stuff. So let's go to the next one. So click on this. So it could be as simple as just putting numbers and adding it. Next slide. It could be, you could do it as percentages and compare which company you want to invest in, for example, based on the attributes, or the car example that I just gave you. It's a very powerful idea to do. And then this one is called C635, another one from Berkeley. So I'll just tell you the general gist of this thing. So I just put a question there, but it's a very simple idea. 6 of us are sitting around the table, and our job is to create a screwdriver. So I make a screwdriver, the most boring screwdriver, and I give it to you. You are the mechanical engineer. You say, oh, let me put a knob to the screwdriver, and you put a knob to the screwdriver. You give it to him, he's the electrical engineer. He'll say, let me put a switch to it, and it automatically goes. And when it comes back to him, and you just got a product that was $1 when it left me, it is $42 that is sold at Home Depot. And it has all these jazzy features and all that stuff. This idea is where 6 people sit around a table, each one sketches 3 ideas. Like I sketch 3 ideas, you sketch 3 ideas, each is for that one question, right? We don't have time to do this, but then I take my ideas and give it to you. You cannot change my ideas. You can add to my ideas. And exactly, group thinking. This is the guy. But when it comes back to me, I have 108 ideas on my thing. It's just amazing. If you just say, how do we make our the routes very shorter or something? And I have 3 ideas. I can say use GPS, use this thing, and use mobile, blah blah blah. And then I give it to you and say, interesting idea. Let's add something to it. What will be surprising is after 6 rounds, 30 minutes, you will get 108 ideas. So it's a very powerful technique. So just click continuously so that in terms interest of time, just keep going. I just explained the whole thing. So since you have the PowerPoint, go ahead. 635 it's called. So Berkeley came up with this idea, mechanical engineering, and then now I'm bringing it into education. So how I bring it into education is I have a math faculty member, a physics faculty member, all of them sit and say, hey, you're all talking about water, sustainable development goals. Come up with 3 ideas for how would you bring water into the curriculum. The math person will write something, physics person will, then I'll give the paper to him because he will say Newton's method and I will calculate this thing and then I'll give it to him and he'll say, oh, I didn't think about it, let me add this to it. And then it'll be amazing. You can do it at a higher education level. You can do it at teacher level, lesson plans. And then, so what happens is math teacher will appreciate the science teacher. But that's the biggest problem. They don't really talk to each other also. Like they're also siloed in their thing. In fact, think about faculty. They don't really talk too much, right? You were asking me who that other person, mechanical engineer was. You were at bits, right? So but that's what happens. We are in different buildings. We don't talk to each other and all that stuff, which is a very common thing. But this type of thing, getting the people into a room can be very helpful. So maybe I'll take 5 more minutes. Okay. So next one, please. So this you can keep going. So this idea is called collaborative sketching. Keep going all the way. You can keep going. So you can do it. This is just to give you, if you are going to do this in your, say, trade or commerce or education, please make a template like this. Come up with a good question. Have people sit in a room like this and draw 3 ideas. Okay, keep going next. And it's not drawing, so keep going, keep going. So when the people get too excited and they draw, it's not about drawing. You don't have time. 5 minutes is all you have. So it's a sketch. It's a sketch. It's an idea of a sketch. Keep going next. So, and then you build on the ideas. Keep going next, please. And that's the screwdriver. And you can keep going next for some time. I'll tell you to stop. Keep going. So that's collaborative sketching, pass it to the next person and all that. So that's the idea for collaborative sketching, and it's building on the ideas. Do not change other people's ideas. That's the thing. Keep going next, please. So, and then it's progressive sketching and keep going next, please. And lots of advantages and disadvantages. Some people scribble and you don't know what they are talking about and all that stuff. I don't even know what your diagram meant and all that. So keep going next. And next one, please. And you can go to the next one. This is something very important. I talked to the Atal Innovation students who presented. Mr. Valliyappan is there. So you're building a product, and let's say the product is a car. I want to buy a car. When I come to you, you should stop there for a second. So when I come after 2 months, many people have the habit of showing me a wheel. And then I come after 2 months, they show me 2 wheels. And then they show the body of the car and then show me the car at the end of the year. And I've given you like, $1 million to build me a car or something like that. And you're showing me, this is agile thinking, but it's not the thinking for a minimum viable product. This is where the UPS type idea. What did I come to ask for? A product that moves from point A to point B. A wheel will not move, that thing will not move. So if I came back, if you go to the next slide, if you actually showed me, if you go to the next slide, please. If you actually showed me a scooter, a skateboard that moves from point A to point B, I say, okay, this guy is thinking. Okay, he's telling me some product that is prototype. Then I come back and you show me, you say it's moved from this thing, but it has some issues. It will only move this much. It's not moving farther, right? So if we go to the next slide, you may show me an actual scooter, like something with a balance and all that stuff. If we go to the next one, maybe you'll show me a cycle that goes outside a little far. But then I really want to go far, then I want a motorbike. And then I show you the car.
this type of approach where you're showing me something that is actually satisfying the functional role is a powerful thing, right? So unfortunately, there's two types of businesses, right? So this is the agile product development with a prototyping, a step-by-step approach. So I think this is where innovation starts in terms of thinking and all that stuff, right?
So they did this for the Tata Nano when Tata had said that he wants
Wonderful.
car. So they started
Exactly like
that
wonderful.
They came up with that the open car and buggy and that kind of a thing, and then gradually it led to the current or the version.
Right? So you can think of education. You can think of so many applications. I can have the most basic, basic lesson I'm teaching, and then my physics teacher says, "Hey, you're doing projectile motion. I'm doing projectile motion. Why don't you say these words and all that stuff?" I have you. So and so this is called MVP. MVP is for more minimum viable product. So unfortunately, this is something I want to talk to. These words are all in business. Business schools use it just like left and right, but we can use it in education. We should be using it, right? So kids don't know these things. In college, kids, yesterday when I presented, they were like, "Oh my God, this is something because this is engineering. If you don't know this way, you're not a good engineer, right? You need to be a good engineer, not just the technical skills, but this type of idea should be built in." So if you go to the next one. So learn to first build an MVP. So that's something I want to really encourage. Even the NEP, I think this idea should come out somehow, in a different way and all that. So if you go to the next slide, please. So final thing is I want to show is the Stanford Design School, which came up with this idea of design thinking. It's 5 steps. Empathy is about needs assessment. Ask your users, who are you solving the problem for? What are you solving? Define the problem statement. Many companies fail because they are going for solutions rather than they're solving something, but they're solving the wrong problem. They're not actually solving they're giving some solution, but it's not the problem that I want to solve. And then you ideate solutions, then you prototype and test it. So if you go to the next one, please. If you go to the next one. So yeah, it's the same thing that I just said. You can click on it 5 times and then ideate, prototype, and test. Next slide, please. So next slide, please. So this is something I wanted to tell you. Some students in a mechanical engineering class at Stanford, this idea was offered, and the instructor asked come up with idea for healthcare and analytics. They did extremely well. They got their A grades and all that stuff. But then they went to the product that they had to build was baby incubators. So they built something that was really good, which was they took a $20,000 incubator and made it like $1,000. That was their innovation. But the problem is they did it for California. So the instructor said, "Why don't you take it to Nepal?" They took it to Nepal and nobody bought it. They said, we can't carry this from here to there and all that stuff, up the mountains and all that stuff. Build us something that we want. That's when the students realized they built something, but for California. So you need to build it for your user. So that's when they came up with this bag that the infant baby bag that you see, that's called Embrace. This is a multi-million-dollar company right now. It becomes the temperature when it's hot, it becomes cold. When it's cold, it becomes warm. India buys this biggest buyer of this product. Okay, so it's $10 right now. So it's amazing how they came up with the simple idea, but they had to go through this failure mode to find this thing and all that. So next slide, please. So you can click, you can pass this because it's the story of Embrace, and these kids were on Time Magazine and all that stuff. If you go to the next one. So this is called design thinking. Next idea, next one. So children with cancer were very afraid to enter the cancer, the room, MRI machine. So some guy who was an architect, he said, "Oh, I'm going to redesign the whole experience." So the kids come in, they buy a ticket like they're going to an amusement park, and then they take the weight. So the beauty of this whole redesigning was that how they did this. The kids have an experience, that whole idea. And this idea, again, unfortunately, is now going to engineering. I would like to bring it into sciences and education because there's a lot to this thing. It's like huge. I think they may have even used the word design thinking in NEP. I'm not sure. Go to the next one. This is it's a very important approach. I'm just going to quickly say what it is. It's called the iceberg approach. Now, anything that we are doing, we tend to see what is above the surface. We call those the events. So, for example, if north, south, east, west, you own 4 hospitals and the people in the east, everybody is dying, like lots of people are dying. And so you are the decision maker and you say, oh, let's move some doctors and nurses from the north, which is doing well, to the south or to the east. So did we make a good decision there? Like as a manager, did I make a good decision? Well, actually not, because by moving that, you may mess up what is nicely going on in the north side and all this stuff. So we need to watch this. Deaths have been happening for quite some time. So we need to watch for the patterns under the surface. Even worse, under that is the structure. Do they have beds? Do they have electricity? Do they have this thing? So I need to really look into the structure that is already there, right? Especially when we are doing policies, this is very, very important. And then finally, mental models. Like people in the East are lazy. People in the East are this thing. So this approach will be very nice for you to, when you're making policies and all that. It's called, you can look it up on the web. It's called iceberg approach. So we forget the mental models when we make policies and all that. We tend to do this at the highest level above the surface. So it's a very powerful technique, something that can be used for. Next one, please. Now I'm going to just say another one which I like very much. So once you agree on, let's say, 5 things that you want to implement, but you don't know which one you want to do first, then you do an impact effort matrix. Which one should I put, which our team should put the lowest effort, but want the highest impact, that quadrant on the top, that's what you want to. The one that you want to avoid is the, you put high effort and low impact. So this, when even the policy comes out, if you have 5 policies, which ones should we release it first? It's so this impact effort matrix is a very powerful thing to do. It's a very easy thing to do, and do it with multiple stakeholders. Like not all trade and commerce people. You have to have some education, and then everybody will give different perspectives, and then some policy will stand out. Like everybody is agreeing on that, and then you know exactly the message, right? So that's a very powerful thing to use. The next one, please. I always do a SWOT analysis. So S stands for strength, weaknesses. So I make a bar. Suppose I want to keep a new restaurant, right? The strength would be what for the restaurant? Well, maybe I have a new cuisine, right? Or I have something. Weakness could be parking. Opportunity could be delivering online, right? So, and the threat could be McDonald's is next door. That's a threat. But then I have to make sure that I can do something. So this is so when you're releasing, when the product is already done, when you're releasing the policy, you do a strength, weak, opportunity, this thing. Then you know exactly everything, like, oh, this bill, there was a bill 1983 like this, blah blah. So you start to talk about those things and all that stuff. So this is a very powerful thing. Next one, please. And finally, when you're releasing a policy and other things, I always think a SMART goal is very important. So like you can say, like, I'm going to do this, we are going to release a policy for education. That's very high level. But if you say a policy for, first year students in all colleges, and which will be implemented by X number of universities, now it's measurable. In so many months, that's also measurable. And then, is it attainable? You don't want to just say, like, if only the elite institutions can do it, you don't want all the government institutions to also be forced to do it. So is it attainable? And then is it relevant? This is where you want to bring sustainable development goals. Like, say, is it relevant to India's needs? Like, you don't want to just say, like, oh, we want to do drones everywhere. Drones are great, but maybe it's good for precision agriculture, where you can fly drones and help the farmers and things like that. But so there are certain things that you can definitely use. And so aligning with the needs. And then time bound, right? So you want to finish the project. So one thing I notice in policy writing, you don't need this type of breakdown. But this is just my suggestion, that if you put a SMART goal along with the policies, it'll be really like, it's very specific. I can measure these things. I can attain it, and then in so many months. And it's very relevant because right now India's focus is this, right? So I think the SMART goal is another thing. So next one, please. And of course, sustainable development. I love this because, there's also a National Academy of Engineering challenge, because students are not thinking at that level. They're thinking like something in a textbook, but my job is to connect the textbook to something like this. Then they get really excited, like comfort and all that. So we go to the next slide. So those are all some of my projects. Like, we have used it all the way from understanding gang violence in Puerto Rico to stopping poaching in Tanzania, Africa, to saving turtles in Brazil, to Zika in Colombia. And that water project is actually Chennai. and it's a body of water that is shared by multiple villages. And this kid who did that project is at Berkeley now, so he created a device that can tell the villagers, like, is it safe to drink or not safe to drink, like a red, yellow, like orange. That's, he wanted to do a project, so and high schooler, and then the top one is the cancer project and all that. And I do have a lot of programs for women, lots and lots of programs. So that picture there is for Right for Education. So next slide, please. So now I hope you can relate to all those words now, right? So hopefully, thank you for giving me the time to cover 30 concepts in whatever time and all that. But I know I did rush through it, but I didn't talk about one thing, CODAP, which you want me to show? It's the coolest. So I did 29. I didn't do this, but I don't know how much time.
You can take a couple of minutes for CODAP.
That's on the web, right? Is on the internet, right?
Yeah.
I'll take a couple of minutes. It'll blow you away. Watch what I'm about to do. And it's a data analysis platform. And so I'm just again.
On the computer.
And you can, and I can use Zoom also. This is oh yeah, they want. So if you want to share,
I'll ask.
so this like 2 minutes, and I really urge you to think about it. The beauty is all the things come to school, like middle school, like 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and luckily I happen to be, for the governor, since I'm the STEM advisor, we're creating the first ever data science high school class. So the kids are going to be, so all the discussions I've been having with IIT, they're all interested in this. They're like, because I showed what students can do in high school, so they're thinking about how to bring, because you can think of dual enrollment with higher education. They're saying, like, the kid does this, we'll give them credit when they join VIT, when they do. So they are already thinking like that. So this is a common data analysis platform, and when I click on it, you will see that this thing comes up. It's really made for younger children, but the power of this is so much. I'm going to show you just a very simple thing that it can do. So it's about how we can teach differently. So when you click on Try Code App, you get two options. You can take any, create a new document. That means you have data sets that you want to bring in from outside, create commerce data sets and all that you can use. But I'm going to use something that is already built in. And there's all these different things. I'm going to use something for already the roller coasters. So when I open roller coasters, I get a data set already populated. It tells you like state, the type of roller coaster, the park it is in, how fast, how speed it goes, what is the maximum height, and so on. So when I'm just going to use the graphs of the roller coaster. And so imagine if you're sitting in a class like this and the teacher is exciting you the following way. So you have all these tabs on the top, and you can actually give them questions already. Like before the students come, you can say, one, what is the roller coaster that goes the top speed? What is, so you can, it's inquiry based. You let them find it, right? So here is, watch how cool this is. And the beauty is you can get any data set into this code app, just drag and drop, and look like this. And so I can just simply graph, and I can take, let's say, all the students will be interested in which one is the top speed. So I can just take the top speed, drag and drop, and just drop it here. And you actually have the top roller coaster right there, right? And then I can do the same thing with maximum height. I can have a graph again and then ask them to do which is the maximum height, and I can drag and drop the maximum height here. And it actually does this maximum height, and I can say it's the big bad wolf, that's the roller coaster. But then here is where the teacher moves are coming in, right? I can say, then is there a relation between top speed and maximum height? Well, that means I have to put it on the same graph. I'll take the maximum height and put it here. Immediately I see a linear trend. The one that goes the fastest is also going. So the kids are starting to think, and then now you sneak in like your regression line and all that stuff. Instead of teaching them like, then you say, who's going to give me the best line? And they can actually say, oh, this line is the best, this line is the best. They try all these best and all that. And then you say, oh, now let me teach you the actual mathematics, the least squares line, which is this green line. And then you teach them. So here is where the problem was there, and the mathematics is being brought out using the technology, right? So unfortunately, our teachers are not trained this way, right? They go in and say, today we are going to learn least squares. Here's y, x, y, beta, right? And write down the formula and all that stuff. So, but even more cooler is if I have a map of the United States,
And if I want to know where my roller coasters are, all the red dots are roller coasters. If I want to know the type of roller coasters, I can put it there. So I gave a challenge to VIT, IIT Madras, and two high schools I presented in. And Mr. Vallier, when you're listening to me also, I think your kids, the school that you're going, please tell them about this. Now you're seeing roller coasters, the theme ones are in Texas and all that stuff. So there is nothing like this for India. So kid can create an Indian map and data sets for within India. That will be a patented innovation, right? So it's just how do you take somebody's research and come up with something more interesting and all that stuff. So I gave them a challenge. So I'm hoping that some student is going to crack this and all that. So, but this is code app for you. Like 2 minutes, you saw what all you can do, right? So, but there's a lot more you can do. But I think the idea is that. So yeah, I think that I want to share that thing. So, but thank you for your time, and I'll stop here. I know I went over, but I'm actually surprised that I talked about all 30 now. Any questions from anyone?
No, it was really wonderful, and we were taken into a different world, but connected to this world. So it was really amazing. And yeah, when you show that first slide, I was thinking that it's
the math.
How are we?
Right?
How are we going to? No. I mean the number of concepts you're going to learn.
Oh, you are right.
So thinking like, how are we going to learn so much? And I'm pretty sure we're going to go way over time. But then within the time, we covered so many things, and it's really amazing. And I think, like you mentioned rightly, there are a lot of things here which are as relevant for like an elementary school student as it is for a policymaker.
Policymaker, yes.
Because you have like many of the methods that you talked about today, smart goals or this SWOT analysis 65. So all these things are applicable for problem solving. And when, for example, previously I was working with McKinsey, and there we think about
we do this all the time.
Yeah,
that's how they do it.
Yeah, these are the questions we ask. They ask about like that. The question you asked, like how many AC repair mechanics are in
consultancy question.
Exactly, and you have to more than the number, we have to tell the method, the approach, how are we thinking, and so on. These are very important. And the example you gave with Fermi, how like being vaguely correct is better than precisely wrong. Being precisely wrong.
Good one. Yeah.
And this John Snow also, it was, I've heard about that, and the way you explained was really nice. I think I saw his thing in the context of the first data scientist who made a big change in health sector. And until then, it was very surprising for us to think about it now, to know that people didn't even think of how the
cholera saved millions of lives.
Yeah.
But the fact is, he used mathematics, which most people don't like. So when the kid asks, like, why should I care? Why do I use? Where do I use it? Things like this can
really motivate. Yeah. No, I think it is, and also we see several times in both in the industry and policy all over the world. Some people say that you can solve problems without getting into the numbers and data and so on. So these are the examples which can actually say that you really have to think about those things. And however, like that example you gave is that quote you gave from Fermi. That's a great quote, because we always think about accuracy. We have to be accurately right, and in that process we waste a lot of time. But then, as long as we know the ballpark and the and the insights, the insights and so on, that will be much better. So, so thank you so much again for coming here and
he was about to go and come back, but he stayed for the whole thing, so that's good.
Would you like to
concepts in an hour? No, it was very
useful.
Need to
connect for sure.
Yeah, sure. I think my biggest takeaway is that some of the most complex concepts can be taught in a very creative and simple way, and the applicability of that in daily life can also be driven in the process into the minds of the students. These are the two things which are lacking, and that's why education is making me depressed. So that can be resolved in a very tangible.
You make them so. I think continuing your thought. I mean, not to say bad about the way. Maybe it was the situation that India had to go through. 2000. So there is this
middle school test called PISA. You probably know this, Program for International Standards and Assessment, given by OECD, given to middle school students on reading, math, and science. You want to take a guess where US rank is out of 70 countries? Everybody says top 10. Unfortunately, it's actually 25 in math, 26 in English and reading, and 24 in. So 2009, they give it every 3 years. I think 2009 or 2012, India participated in that group. Do you know what India's rank was?
India was the best.
You're sure?
I
62.
62.
Surprising, right? So, and do you know what? And Peru's rank was at that time when India went 69. And I'm taking two countries now. India, such a big country. Peru, such a small country. The next 3 years, again, they had a policy change in the country, right? And it has to do with the government probably also. What did Peru do? They came back and they moved to 62. They moved 7 ranks. 7 ranks is no joke, right? What do you think India did? Probably know this.
They moved to 69.
No, they dropped out.
Oh,
Yeah.
They dropped out. They said, oh, how can we be 62? That
Yeah.
pride and ego, right? So I think this is where we need to understand, like, and but the NEP policy was, came back. 2021 was the next one. They moved it because of COVID. It's happening 2022. India is coming back. So I'm really looking forward to how they're going to be doing. But I think India should be looking. So, I think sometimes we are like, oh no, and at the same time, South Korea was like #1 and all that stuff, right? And I asked South Korea, I congratulated because I know the guy who's doing the education. And he was like, he said, Padu, you don't know who we give the test to. That's when I appreciated United States because United States gives it to the autistic child, to every child. It doesn't matter, right? So that's when I thought, are they bringing all the toppers into the room and giving the test and all that stuff? So sometimes you start to wonder who's.
That's the answer for India also. India, so if you had taken the cream, then probably would
Take
have
the cream, then they'll kill the test, right? So, but I think, but this type of thinking, right? And it's very applied problems. That's why the word problems, like currency change and this thing and all that. So one country that actually slowly crept up and it's on #1 is Singapore. Because their slogan is teach less, learn more. Another country that is there on the top, that's like teachers teach less, so students learn more. That's kind of where they were going. So if we go to their classrooms, teachers speak less. The students are always doing things and all that. Finland is learning by doing. Everything is like, okay, 3 cups, fractions, and, 1/3 and all that stuff, always hands-on stuff, Lego and all that stuff, right? So maybe we should have a slogan. I'm sorry to say this, we should have a slogan. Test less, learn more. Both for the US and India. We test a lot. I think it's time we reduce the testing, especially that summative testing, like read everything and
just test one.
Maybe formative tests, right? Like give little tests, like 1% every day or something every week or something like that, and keep 30% for the final exam. Don't give like 100% for the final exam. You're just gonna, lots of kids will be so disappointed and all that. So I think the India is definitely making a lot of. This government, I'm noticing. NEP is very exciting. That's why I wanted to connect with somebody where I can help with some of the things in the NEP and all. I'm glad we can do something with this.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much again. And I think in terms of education, there are a lot of insights we can get from this. And like you said, even for trade and commerce, basically we have in India we have been trying to increase exports and diversify into very many areas where we haven't been there. So there, the fundamental driver for that is innovation, and that is coming from all these things that we discussed. So the innovation and the competency is the right approach.
For the innovation, you need creativity. You need to let kids be creative and all that.
And that has to start from there. Actually, it's not something that can. We have a lot of skill development programs which are very important, but I think skill development is one aspect, which is like assuming that you already are creative, you are making a lot of innovations, and then you know how to deliver. So to build things, you need much more than skills. You also need this creativity and.
That's the fact that the good thing about this is it's very raw. It transcends boundaries, be it education, healthcare, anything, right?
Any of these
It's a way-
methods could
It's
be
just
used.
a way of doing things, anything,
Exactly.
whatever you.
So the people online, thank you for being there. Any questions or comments you have?
No, I think it was a very good exercise, very, very nice session that we had. I wonder if you could share this online also. I mean, how could we access to
Absolutely.
whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. We have recorded this and it will be there on our YouTube channel very soon. Niti Ayog's YouTube channel, and will anyone can look it up in our YouTube channel. It will be there. Yeah. And once we share, we'll again share it again on social media.
All right. Okay. But it was a great, very knowledgeable and good contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
By the way, that's a one semester course. I do 3 techniques in a day, so that's 15 classes. You know,
Really compressed.
they do a project
Probably,
and all that.
probably in future we'll have a workshop
Yeah,
on this. We can
we
have
do
a
whole-
detailed
it
workshop
was
with
much better if
education.
they actually
Yeah.
just they build something and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We can do that planned
So probably
workshop.
there's
Yeah.
something, probably there's something you're used to of taking so many classes or, going through a lot of topics in limited time. But for us, I mean, some at places we felt it was just being rushed into, but we got the basic hang of it. So
Great, great, great. Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank-
thanks,
thank you.
Mr. Oliappan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you so much. Thank you once again,
Of course,
Dr.
yeah.
Gadu. It was great having you here. And, we will look forward to many more collaborations.